I'm Mark Zaccaria. This is Common Sense. Welcome back. I'm talking today with Carolyn Medeiros, Executive Director of the Alliance for Safe Communities here in Rhode Island. Carolyn, thank you very much for coming down today.
Thank you very much, Mark.
No problem. And we had kind of an introductory first segment, and this time around I'd like to focus a little bit on the lobbying efforts that the Alliance provides for its customers and clients, whether they even know their customers and clients at all times. You do primarily lobbying and spend a lot of time up in Smith Hill, is that correct?
Yes, I do.
And what sorts of things do you do, and can you perhaps take us through how a typical bill that's recently been made law as a result of your efforts, or at least in part, and what kinds of things on a day-to-day basis do you have to do to make sure it comes home?
One thing we do that people don't even know is that we oppose many progressive, liberal, lenient on crime, soft on crime bills that are already being put in. So we're testifying in those committees, but you won't see us on the news talking about it. And then we will also work with victims of violent crime in their particular cases, say a domestic violence murder case. And we will use that as an example when we're trying to get a murder sentencing bill that we talked about through. And we will look at the heinousness of the crime. And we will work with the news media, which in turn will cover the story, represent the family, and put pressure on our legislators that maybe they should think about this bill, because it's not just this one family, but when I testify in committees, I give each senator or each representative a very thorough packet, which I'm very well known for, with colorful photos and whatnot, and very statistical data, state-wise and national-wise, to show the contrast of what's happening, in an effort to prod them to perhaps consider this is the year that we just can't wait anymore. And in regards to the murder sentencing bill, it got so bad that I put a packet together and said, we're not just a state with a high murder rate now, we're a state where I titled it the throwaway state. And the cover photo had a picture of the state of Rhode Island in a garbage can. I said, people aren't just getting killed anymore, they're being thrown in recycle bins, garbage dumpsters, dropped in a cemetery, put on fire, chopped up and put in a garbage bag. That really upset them that I did that. But you know what? That was last year and we got that bill through. And the press loved it, and the media loved it. And Rhode Islanders were horrified that I had 9 cases at least in 1 year of disposable bodies, but it's becoming a trend.
Sounds like the bottom line is that your job as a lobbyist is to put pressure on legislators. They're your audience.
Yes, and it takes a lot of research and a lot of work to get that done.
And you have to coordinate not only your own efforts, but you orchestrate the media when you can. You obviously bring in victims that may be unrelated to the immediate bill, but that underline its importance.
Yes.
And do a variety of things. You say that you are well known on Smith Hill for having detailed packets of information. And I assume then that what you're doing is homework for legislators that they then don't have to do themselves, whether or not they ever would.
Well, I think that we hear the news and we forget the news. And I've heard Rhode Islanders are great for not having a long-term memory and having a very short-term memory. So I track, and I keep track, I do the research, and I compile it all, so that way what was forgotten in the course of the year, or what was forgotten in the 3 years it took us to get to where passing the murder sentencing bill, it was just totally shameful at that point. I had cases that I compiled and presented that it was inarguable that it was time for that bill to get passed.
So you would say that in something like the murder sentencing process, which took 3 years, one of the things you had to do in year 2 was remind people of what they'd learned in year 1. Start over again.
Yes, and have a diligent rep at the time, a diligent senator at the time was Senator Raptakis, and he wouldn't give up. He was like a pit bull. He stayed on that bill and he fought to the end. It was a team effort. The Brotherhood of Corrections, we all stepped in to make sure that happened for Rhode Islanders, because frankly it's quite ludicrous that someone who commits a murder one crime would serve 10 years and get out.
I take it then that you must have what is referred to in baseball as a scouting book. You probably know or have written down who the good people and who are not so good, or who you can approach with certain things and who would be better for other things in the legislature.
In the terms of the State House, unfortunately, yeah. It's like weeding a garden.
So you know all about it. Now, we've talked a bit about the murder sentencing guidelines and your successes there over a 3-year
Yes.
cycle. You also, in the last session, were responsible, I've heard, for the new statute on child-safe zones.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about what that is, and then tell our viewers, what did you have to do to get that to happen, and how long did it take?
That's a great example where the media came to me. Tim White came to me, and he found a level 2 sex offender working as an electrician at Hasbro Children's Hospital. He had access to any floor, any time with a scanned card, even when he wasn't working, okay? He was on the sex offender registry, level 2, and he asked me, Carolyn, I found this, what's to do? So I said, well, give me a week, I'll get back to you. I did some research, and I realized that 20 other states had some form of what was kind of referred to, especially in Texas, as child safe zone laws, which is common sense. In Rhode Island, what we had was, well, you know, it's on your honor that you're doing a background check at the daycare so you don't hire a pedophile. But there was nothing codified really in law. So the child safe zone laws, I worked with Assistant AG Joey Lindbeck on that. I have to give her credit. I did all the research and gave her boxes of it, and she formulated law. They were looking at other laws, and I think Idaho, I believe, was a very good model. And we covered anything from swimming pools to summer camps to movie theaters to the gamut, okay? Facilities that service children, hospitals, daycares, facilities that service children were not allowed to hire registered sex offenders. And if they did, they were looking at a $5,000 fine and 5-year incarceration. And if a knowing registered sex offender attempted to get a job at these facilities, it was a 5-year sentence with a $5,000 fine. And for the specific employer who ignored the fact and went through the process of hiring a known sex offender, it was $1,000 every day that they were employed on top of the original fines.
No.
So we were pretty tough on it.
I understand it's something we're going to go into a little bit more detail about in our next segment, but for an employer to avoid hiring, then they have to first understand that what they're looking at is a registered sex offender. Is it easy for employers to find that out?
Yes, it is. We were talking registered sex offenders, so that's level 2, level 3. We'll get into how easy that is later on in terms of their addresses and where they're living. But one other point about that bill that I should bring up, and it's very important, was the liability clause, which Senator Archambault attempted to remove. And he was a sponsor on the bill, and I was baffled as to why. And this happened in the last 3 days of session. The liability clause protected you as a daycare owner, that if this pedophile comes in as a registered sex offender and you don't know, and for some reason it's not on the registry, but he knows, and you hire him, you're not liable. And we were trying to protect businesses by doing that.
And
So why did he try to pull that out of our bill? And he brought the Trial Lawyers Association on top of me as well, threatening with lawsuits.
and I think I heard that the Attorney General's office is the originator of this new statute. So there's a little expansion to your lobbying targets.
I became an executive lobbyist, and I had to interact with the AG's office. And I mean, considering Tim White had already ran the story and Rhode Islanders were in horror that it was a children's hospital, pedophiles running around, and yeah, the AG's office stepped up, and they were very happy with the abundance of research that I did for 3 months that I submitted to them.
So it just expands the scope of the
Yes.
alliance and what it's doing. Listen, we have to take a break right now.
Thank you.
We will take a break, and guess what? There'll probably be some sarcasm to follow us, as I think someone's going to pop up with the question, are you kidding me?